Today we're getting a first look at a new Giant Mouse model that's going to be dropping at the beginning of August. This is the Giant Mouse Bleeker. I'm also going to pull out some other Giant Mouse models so you can see this one compared to some of the other models, and also see the size compared to the other models, because this is very slim and sleek. They're calling it a hybrid between an EDC knife and a gentleman's knife, and I completely agree. That's right where this sits. You could absolutely carry this as a basic EDC knife or as a gentleman's knife. It has a trailing point that's not too trailing. It's slightly trailed up in magnet cut steel. We'll talk more about that in a second. Crowned spine, and because of the size and because of the sleekness and slimness, you have a lot of control of that tip. So that's one thing, or one reason why I typically stay away from Persians or trailing points for EDC. But when it's done like this, they work great. Then we have a super slim titanium frame lock. We have a steel lock bar insert, of course, and a deep carry wire clip that is reversible. The wire clips, man, they're the best clips as far as smoothness in and out of the pocket, and as far as not tearing up your pockets. Even some of the best clips still eventually wear out your pocket. Wire clips are one of the only clips that really don't. Now, the handle is super slim. Like, yes, it's a full size length handle, so you can get a full grip, but it's very narrow. But that also makes it where it's very manipulatable because it's so slim and sleek. The backspacer is a titanium backspacer. You see the lanyard post right there. The jimping on the backspacer is actually functional. And we have jimping right there. Now the access to the lock bar is good. They cut it back right here. And let me show you something that they did that I am so happy that they did do. Watch when I turn it around. Bam, they added this little cutout right there, which makes it very easy to reverse flick. When I first pulled it out, I was like, oh man, this is going to be tough. It's going to be tough to do action on, or tough to deploy. And boy, is it easy. Like, you don't expect it to be so easy. It's so easy, I can put my finger on the lock bar and still reverse flick it in the left hand. So this to me is a great left-handed knife. As far as the thumb flick with the left, maybe I'm not the best thumb flicker with the left, but you can do it. But yeah, it offers this chamfer right here for the thumb, and then the little knockdown area right there for the reverse flick. Everything's rounded and contoured, so even though these are scooped out, they're not sharp by any means. And I like that, that Giant Mouse does that. It's almost like they melt the edges, which can backfire in some cases. You don't want stuff to be too smooth and too slippery, but this one's done very, very well. And the detent, very well tuned. It's not a strong detent, not a light detent. It's something that you can easily, like I said, left-handedly open, so it's not too strong to where you're locking yourself out, but it has a nice click to it. But being so slim and sleek, I'm glad it's not a strong detent. I would say it's on, if it was like 1 out of 10, 10 being the strongest detent, 1 being the weakest detent, won't even stay in the handle, I would say it's about a 4.5 to 5, where, it's right on the little bit towards the lighter side, but still on the good side of lighter, where I think most people will appreciate it. The crown spine, well, the blade itself is somewhat of a thicker blade, but it does get down to a nice cutting edge, and the tip is going to be very, very pokey. The drop on it is on ceramic caged bearings, and having that thick spine definitely encourages it to be a little bit more drop shutty. As far as it being gentlemanly, it's so slim and sleek. How can it not be, carried as a gentleman knife? It's very, very, that's the first thing you notice. Is just like, wow, this thing is super, super slim. Now, let me show you just how slim it is. Here is another model that would be considered a regular size knife, and you can see how much beefier this knife is than the Bleeker. The Bleeker. This is the Iona version 2 in titanium. They did a great job with this one. Wasn't a fan of the original one. The version 2 I actually like. And then here is the Jutland. This one's the one in burlap. By the way, guys, Giant Mouse just dropped a black canvas in Magna Cut Jutland. So awesome, awesome model. One of my favorite models from Giant Mouse. Again, it does have a trailing point, but this is a trailing point that's done perfectly. You can use the tip very well. You can use the belly. It's just an awesome knife all the way around. And you can see this thing dwarfs this knife. It makes this knife look tiny. And this is, you know, a full-size knife, of course, but it's not like it's a giant knife. You know, it's just a full-size knife. Now, here is another one. And this one is a bit, it's, you know, more of what they've done before as far as in the sleek and slim area. It's the Sonoma version 2. And you can see it has a similar narrowness. This is a great knife, man. I think it's a gorgeous knife, very snappy, great knife. But again, very slim, very sleek. This one's more a little bit larger, so it's a little less gentlemanly. But even with a gentleman knife, you don't want to go too small, in my opinion. Then one more really quick. This guy right here, I think is their most, I believe it's their most expensive knife yet, because it is an integral. And I believe it's OEM'd by Riyadh, if I understand correctly. I could be wrong about that, but titanium mill pocket clip, integral handle, frame lock, and it is done extremely, extremely well. And this one also has a trailing point. So you can see here that they have some similarities in length, similarities in blade shape, but this is much more narrow. This is a great full-size gentleman knife, in my opinion. Of course, you can carry it as an EDC because it'll function just fine. But yeah, it's a super solid knife. I like this one quite a bit. And the blade steel on this one, I think, is Magna Cut, I believe. I might be wrong. I can't remember now. I can't quite remember because it is so plain. Like, there's nothing on this. All you have is the Giant Mouse logo right there. And other than that, you have no branding at all, which I frickin' dig. So yeah, anyways, you get to see it compared to that. Now, I do have some negatives we're going to get into. So first off, I want to say that I do not know the price of this, but I will have everything linked down in the description for you guys. And I don't know when you're watching this. It could potentially be available already, so check the links down in the description. But here are my negatives. One, it did come with a little lock rock. Now, it's very subtle, and I have to put quite a bit of stress on it. Now, I'm honestly not going to hold that against this knife at this time, because a lot of knives fresh out of the box have that. They just need to be used. Like, literally, you just cut up a little bit of cardboard with it and it'll be fine. This is my first impression, so, you know, I'm just giving you my first impressions before I've really used it and everything else. I'll do another video on it, but I do believe that after pressure gets applied to the edge, the lock bar will most likely break into place. Giant Mouse typically does a good job with their lock face geometry. Anyways, next thing, mine did come with side-to-side play. Like, the pivot wasn't, it's fine now. I mean, all I had to do was just tighten the pivot. You know, so now it's rock solid, like a damn bank vault, aside from, you know, I mean, it feels solid. Nobody, I don't think anybody would even feel the lock rock. You have to get it all the way out by the tip and really, you know, kind of jiggle it to feel it. So that's what tells me that it's probably just going to go away. But the side-to-side out of the box, it was like, why wasn't that tightened from the factory? Now, I'm not trying to give them, you know, excuses or anything, but I know this from my own experience, that when you're dealing with different weathers and different environments, some environments are cold, some environments are hot, and some environments are brutally hot. Like, some of these shipping containers that are shipping this stuff is 120 degrees in some cases. I mean, just absolutely brutally hot. And parts expand, parts contract. Titanium expands and contracts. So it makes it to where it potentially expanded and contracted, and that's why it was. I don't imagine that they, you know, left the pivot loose coming out of the factory. It probably, like I said, just expanded and contracted. But I'm just calling it as I see it. And yes, I had to tighten the pivot. Is that a big deal? No, not at all. I don't even want to call that a negative. It's more of just, it happened. So it can't be a negative if it doesn't continue to affect me. Now, here are some real negatives. So those things were just, you know, observations. This is a real negative. So One being, I think their magnet cut is 60 to 62. I'm not 100% sure exactly what they're running it at because I've seen different companies or different sites said different HRCs. I'd like to see Giant Mouse running their magnet cut between 63 and 64, at the very lowest 62, but I want to see a 63, 64. It just doesn't make any sense with a magnet cut steel, especially with all the testing we've done out here. 63 to 64 seems to be a great area for it, considering the heat treatment's done well. So as long as the heat treatment's done well, 63 to 64 leads to better edge retention, better cutting performance or edge performance, ease of sharpening, ease of deburring, ease of maintenance, like just so many factors come out with the sharpening and edge quality. And being a folding knife, toughness is like on the lowest part of what we care about. Obviously, it's still considered, but you'd use the geometry to base that, right? So the geometry will determine the toughness of the blade. Don't sacrifice my edge retention, my ease of sharpness, and the ability to get incredibly sharp edges, because low HRC steels in many cases won't even take a hair whittling edge. They just don't have the edge stability to do that. So, you know, the higher HRC steels they get high levels of sharpness and they hold it, and then they also are easier to deburr, so you have a better chance of having a higher quality edge without problems. So I just don't see the point in taking some of that away for toughness in a folding knife. Like, this isn't a fixed blade. We're not chopping with it. We're not, it's a folding knife. We want edge retention and sharpness. Now, if you wanted to get some toughness out of your folding knife, just make the geometry a little thicker. Like in this one, in this case, this is a tough blade. This is a relatively tough blade, considering the geometry. I would never worry about breaking this. Yeah, you could drop it and maybe, chip the tip a little bit, but even that is not going to chip pretty easily. So, I just don't see why run it soft. It just seems like it's just, you wind up losing the very qualities of why we pay the premium dollars, right? We pay the premium dollars because we expect to get the best out of our steels, the best out of everything. And I truly believe that for folding pocket knives, 63 to 64 is going to be the best. And that's the reason why so many companies are running at that HRC now and have came to the same conclusions. Anyways, next thing is the stop pin placement. Now, I can't complain too much about this because you will never sharpen the amount of steel that it would require or anything like that. You'll never sharpen it out. Where the stop pin lands is technically behind the edge, but it is in the thickest portion. It's literally right here. You can actually see the line right there. So you'll never sharpen into there. It's just too thick. You will sharpen and your edge will actually start moving forward a little bit because of the thickness right here. So your edge is going to go from here forward. You're never going to sharpen back to there. Even if you get the biggest smile in the world, it will never remove that much steel. And the blade is so narrow, you're never going to get to that point. So I'm not calling this a negative for that reason. I'm only saying it because if I wanted to clean up my edge and make sure that I had a good choil, sharpening choil, not finger choil, sharpening choil, I can't do that with this knife. So it's going to create a smile. When I sharpen this, it will hit the plunge grind, it will create a smile, and after 2 or 3 sharpenings, it could potentially be a little ugly in the blade because it doesn't have a cut, clean, and dry sharpening choil and plunge grind. You want to have room from your edge to the plunge grind. Here is a good example of that. The plunge grind starts here and it ends right at the end of the shadow. You can see where the shadow goes. That's the end of the plunge grind. Beginning, end. So now I have all of this steel to remove, because every time you sharpen, you remove the edge. You remove steel from the edge. So your edge eventually will go up higher and higher and higher and higher. So every time when you sharpen it, you're going to sharpen into this area right here. So you don't want this to be thick, because otherwise then you sharpen up into that. Have you ever seen an edge where it's sharpened up into the plunge grind? Like, that can look ugly, especially for some gentleman knives or knives that you want to keep looking nice. So Is that big of a deal? No, it's not going to prevent you from anything. It's not going to do anything like that. It just, well, it prevents one thing. It prevents you from cutting in your own sharpening choil if you wanted to, which I do think is important in most cases. Is it a deal breaker? No, not at all. But it's something that I always consider because I'm a knife sharpener and I use my knives. So I sharpen steel from my knives and I want my knives to look good through the long haul. This next one, I do want to be clear, I 100% could be wrong about this. So I am willing to be wrong when I say this. But I checked all the other giant mouse models, and all of them have ceramic detent balls. So that's what's leading me to believe I am wrong. But when I look at this one, it looks like a steel detent. It doesn't look like a ceramic one. And maybe, you know, it might not come over the way it's reflecting to me, but steel detent balls tend to reflect, you know, a shiny silver, right? Ceramic detent balls shine black like that, or white like this. As far as the bearings, I'm pretty sure they're ceramic caged bearings. If they're not, I'll write it on the screen, what I came up with, but hopefully the detent, because even if you look in that hole right there, it doesn't look ceramic. It looks like a steel ball. See that? So I would prefer that to be ceramic if it is steel. Is that a big deal? Not really. You know, it's just little nitpicks. I'm coming up with these little nitpicks because this is not, you know, a super cheap knife. This is an expensive knife. I believe it's made in Italy. And I think Giant Mouse does a great job with their knives. I have a ton of them. So really, there's not a lot of negatives here that are deal breakers in any way, shape, or form. It's a great knife. It's a good knife. It's built and done very well. I have found that Giant Mouse does do a really good job. I like their knives. I love their designs. I think they have some of the best micarta in the knife community. They do an amazing job. They really do. My biggest complaint about Giant Mouse, period, and is my biggest criticism towards them. It has nothing to do with their build quality, their fit, their finish, their action, their tolerances, anything like that. They do a great job with all that. It's just like a lot of other Italian companies, they tend to run their steels a little bit on the softer side. They do good heat treatments, but they run just a little bit on the softer side. I'd love to see them bump that up a little bit. It just makes more sense, especially with folding pocket knives. However, they're not doing a bad job with it. Like, it's still a good heat treatment, well heat treated steel, you know, just leaning towards the lighter side on the HRC. Anyways, this one, I have no doubt that this thing isn't going to hold a great edge for a very long time and be an awesome little user for a lot of people. Like I said, this is a knife you can do incredible detail work. If you're in in a job or career where you have to do detailing work and stuff with a blade, this could potentially serve you very, very well as, you know, a little backup or a little side tool. And as a gentleman knife, obviously this is going to, you know, this is sleek. It's good looking. It has great qualities, great materials. So this would be an awesome little piece to gent carry, you know, when you're, you know, wearing and doing the finer things in life. So there you guys go. Work hard, stay tough. Until next time, peace.